You ever read something that just feels like it's designed to break your brain? I mean, a real puzzle? Well, we're diving into an ancient text today that kicks off with exactly that. It's this reality-shattering riddle that just throws everything we think we know right out the window. So let's see if we can unravel this thing. So what you're seeing here, these are the opening lines of a text called the Mūlamadhyamakakārikā. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. You can think of it as the fundamental verses on the middle way. It was written way back in the 2nd century by this incredible Indian philosopher, Nāgārjuna. And look, these 8 negations, they're not just some poetic flourish. No, this is the foundation of his entire philosophy. It's like a philosophical wrecking ball, and he's aiming it right at our most basic fundamental assumptions about reality. All right, so you gotta ask, right? Why on earth would you start a book like that? What was going on back then that made Nāgārjuna feel like he had to, completely demolish the very idea of reality? Well, he basically looked around and saw what the text calls a thicket of views. I love that phrase. It's like everyone was tangled up in their own version of the truth. Everyone had the ultimate answer for where everything came from. You had some people saying it was a great god, others saying it was just nature, or maybe time itself. Some thought it was all just random chance, or even cosmic dust. And the problem? All these conflicting absolute certainties were just creating endless arguments, a ton of confusion, and ultimately a whole lot of suffering. So, Nāgārjuna's big move here was, well, it was pretty radical. He wasn't about to just throw another answer onto the pile. Nope. His idea was to create a method to completely dismantle the questions themselves. And his goal here is, honestly, it's profound. He wants to extinguish this thing he calls silun, or silun. And this is key. It's not about winning an argument or being the smartest guy in the room. It's about stopping a really destructive mental habit that we all have. So what is this silun? It's basically conceptual proliferation. You know that endless chatter that goes on in your head? The part of your mind that's constantly trying to grasp and label and pin down a fixed reality? That's it. It's our obsession with putting everything into these neat, tidy little boxes. And for Nāgārjuna, that was the root of the whole problem. It's the engine that drives all our confusion. Okay, so how do you stop that mental chatter? Well, his approach is brilliant. You don't ignore it, you don't suppress it. Instead, you follow its own logic until it completely breaks. His method is basically a form of logical demolition. It's like an intellectual stress test for literally any idea you can come up with. And this is his go-to tool. It's sometimes called the tetralemma, which just means 4 propositions. Here's how it works. You take any idea, anything you think is a certainty, and you look at the only 4 possibilities. 1, it's true. 2, it's not true. 3, it's both true and not true. And 4, it's neither true nor not true. That's it. Those are all the options. And by systematically proving that none of these can possibly work, he shows you that the real problem, the fundamental flaw, was in the question you asked in the first place. All right, let's put this tool to the test. We're going to apply it to something we think we understand completely, something we take for granted every single day: cause and effect. The text gives us this simple but honestly brilliant example. We all know a sprout comes from a seed, right? But just stop and think about it for a second. Is that sprout the exact same thing as the seed it came from? Or is it a totally different thing? It seems like a simple enough question, doesn't it? And this is where the trap snaps shut. Just think it through. If the sprout and the seed are the same, well then nothing ever really changed, did it? There was no growth, no process. A seed would just be a sprout. But okay, what if they're completely different? Then what in the world connects them? Why does a seed produce a sprout and not, say, a rock? The connection is totally random. So you see, either way you go, our simple, everyday idea of cause and effect just falls apart. So he applies that 4-part logic. Things can't be born from themselves. That's the same problem we just talked about. They can't be born from something else. That's the different problem. They can't come from both, and they can't come from nothing. So, what's his mind-bending conclusion? Our whole concept of one thing being born from another is, from the ground up, totally flawed. And this is what leads him to his most famous and maybe most misunderstood concept, wuzi-sing. It's often translated as emptiness, but, and this is so important, it does not mean nothingness, not at all. It means no self-nature.
What he's saying is that no single thing has a fixed, independent identity all by itself. A sprout isn't just a sprout. It only exists because of a whole web of relationships. The seed, the soil, the water, the sun. Everything depends on everything else.
Okay, so at this point, you might be thinking, what's the big takeaway here, right? Why go through all these intellectual gymnastics just to prove that our ideas don't make sense? What is the point of all this? Well, the point is definitely not to become a nihilist and say that nothing is real. Think of it more like therapy for your mind. Nāgārjuna is prescribing what he calls a middle way, and it's a cure for our addiction to being certain all the time. He's arguing that so much of our suffering comes from desperately clinging to these fixed, rigid ideas about ourselves, about the world, that when you really look at them, just don't hold up. But then, he hits you with the final, most subtle trap of all. After you've used this incredible logic to tear down all your fixed views, Nāgārjuna warns you that emptiness itself can become just another rigid idea you cling to. If you turn his cure into a new belief system, if you start walking around saying, aha, I get it, the ultimate reality is emptiness, well, you've completely missed the point. You've just built yourself a brand new mental prison. And that leaves us with this really powerful challenge, one that's just as relevant today as it was almost 2,000 years ago. It's an invitation to look at our own thicket of views, all the things we are absolutely, positively sure of, and to just gently, logically ask ourselves, are those beliefs, are they really as solid as they feel?